The desert has a way of playing tricks on the mind. Sand shifts with ancient whispers, wind carries voices from empty valleys, and the sun bakes reality until it shimmers like a mirage. But in 2007, at the height of the Iraq War surge, something began happening to coalition forces that military psychiatrists still struggle to explain today. It wasn't the familiar specter of combat stress or the psychological shadows that follow soldiers home from war. This was different, coordinated, impossible. Multiple units across different theaters began reporting the same phenomenon. They were hearing voices together, not isolated incidents of battlefield hallucination, but synchronized auditory experiences affecting entire squads simultaneously. The voices spoke in perfect English, using proper military terminology and accurate call signs. They provided tactical intelligence, warned of incoming threats, and requested immediate assistance. They were the voices of American soldiers who had died weeks or months earlier, yet somehow continued broadcasting on emergency frequencies, calling for help that would never come. Radio operators dubbed them ghost comms. Intelligence officers filed reports under atmospheric interference and equipment malfunction. Medical personnel diagnosed mass psychogenic illness. But when entire units began acting on intelligence provided by dead soldiers, when multiple witnesses reported identical conversations with voices that shouldn't exist, the Pentagon quietly launched an investigation that remains classified to this day. What follows are 3 documented accounts from that investigation. Testimonies gathered from soldiers who swore they heard the impossible together, who risked courts, martial, and psychological evaluation to report experiences that challenged everything we think we know about consciousness, communication, and death itself. In the fog of war, the line between reality and nightmare becomes dangerously thin. But when multiple witnesses see or hear the same impossible thing, we must ask ourselves a chilling question. What if the fog was hiding something real? If you're drawn to these kinds of documented military mysteries and want more accounts like this, consider subscribing. You'll find stories here that exist in the shadows between official history and impossible truth. Now, let's step into the desert nights of 2007, where the dead refused to stay silent. Forward, operating base. Courage sits like a concrete island in the vast ocean of the Iraqi desert, its perimeter walls rising from sand that has absorbed the blood of civilizations. March 2007 found the base operating at full capacity during the height of the surge, with communication towers reaching toward an endless sky, their antennae searching for signals across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. The 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment, had been conducting routine communication sweeps when radio operator specialist Marcus Chen first noticed the anomaly. Chen was a 6-year veteran of military communications, a soldier who understood the delicate dance between radio waves and atmosphere that kept American forces connected across the sprawling battlefields of Iraq. He knew the difference between equipment failure and enemy interference, between atmospheric skip and deliberate jamming. What he heard on the emergency frequency that night was none of those things. The email arrived at Military Intelligence Headquarters 3 days later, time-stamped March 15, 2007, subject line reading simply, Incident Report, Unauthorized Radio Transmission. Chen's words carried the weight of a man who understood that his career, and possibly his sanity, hung in the balance of what he was about to report. "Sir, I need to report something that happened during last night's comm check. At approximately 300 hours, while monitoring emergency frequencies, I picked up a transmission on 121.5 MHz. The voice was speaking perfect English with an American accent, requesting immediate medical evacuation for wounded soldiers at grid reference 38 SMB 7103520. Here's the thing, sir. I recognized the voice. It was Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. The problem is, Rodriguez died in an IED explosion 2 weeks ago. I was at his memorial service. I immediately called for Sergeant Williams and Corporal Thompson to verify what I was hearing. All three of us listened as the transmission repeated every 15 minutes for over 2 hours. Same voice, same coordinates, same desperate request for medevac. We tried responding multiple times but received no acknowledgement. The coordinates led to an empty lot that had been cleared by EOD 3 days prior. No signs of recent activity, no blood, no equipment. Nothing. Sir, I've been doing radio work for 6 years. I know equipment malfunctions, I know atmospheric interference, and I know pranks. This wasn't any of those things. This was Rodriguez's voice, requesting help that will never come, from a place where nothing happened. Military communication logs would later reveal that Chen's report was not isolated. Between March and June 2007, 17 different operators across 4 forward operating bases filed nearly identical reports. Each described hearing deceased American personnel requesting assistance at coordinates that, when investigated, revealed no signs of recent military activity. The phenomenon became known among radio operators as ghost comms, transmissions that appeared simultaneously across multiple frequencies, always featuring the voices of recently fallen soldiers. What made these incidents particularly disturbing wasn't just their supernatural nature, but their technical impossibility. These weren't fragments of old conversations bouncing off the ionosphere or atmospheric echoes of previous transmissions. The voices were responsive, interactive, changing their messages slightly with each broadcast. The Iraqi desert at night transforms into a vast natural antenna, its mineral-rich sand capable of conducting radio waves across impossible distances. In this electromagnetic soup, communication equipment often behaved erratically, picking up signals from hundreds of miles away, occasionally capturing fragments of conversations that had occurred days or even weeks earlier. Radio operators were accustomed to these ghostly echoes of the past. But Chen's report described something different entirely. The transmission wasn't a fragment or echo. It was active, deliberate, purposeful. The coordinates provided by Rodriguez's voice shifted by mere meters each night, creating a systematic search pattern around the empty lot, as if someone was desperately trying to pinpoint their exact location. Weather reports noted unusual electromagnetic activity in the region during this period, but meteorologists couldn't identify any natural phenomena that would account for the disturbances. As word of the Rodriguez frequency spread through the tight-knit community of military radio operators, more soldiers began monitoring 121.5 MHz during their night watches. They didn't have to wait long. Within a week, Rodriguez's lonely voice was joined by others. Corporal Davis, killed by sniper fire outside Ramadi. Private First Class Washington, victim of a roadside bomb on Highway 1. Lieutenant Garcia, lost when his helicopter was shot down during a rescue mission. Each voice carried the same desperate urgency, the same professional military bearing, the same heartbreaking requests for assistance that would never arrive. All broadcasting from coordinates where nothing existed but sand, silence, and the occasional scorpion scuttling across ancient ground. The intensity of the transmissions seemed to increase as more soldiers began listening. Rodriguez's voice, initially calm and professional, took on notes of increasing desperation. This is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, requesting immediate medevac at grid 38 SM BF71OXO35200. We have multiple casualties. Urgent surgical. Please respond. Over. The pause between transmissions grew shorter. The coordinates became more precise, narrowing down to specific meter squares as if the speakers were refining their position with each broadcast. Chen found himself drawn to the radio each night, compelled by a mixture of professional duty and personal anguish. He had served alongside Rodriguez for 8 months, had shared guard duties and late-night conversations about home. The voice coming through the static was unmistakably his friend, not an echo or recording, but Rodriguez himself, somehow still trying to save lives from beyond death. The last recorded transmission from the Rodriguez frequency occurred on June 18, 2007. Chen was monitoring as usual when Rodriguez's voice cut through the static with unusual clarity. For the first time in 3 months, the transmission was different. Rodriguez's professional military cadence cracked, revealing something underneath that made Chen's blood run cold. Chen, Marcus, stop listening. Stop looking for us. We're not asking for help anymore. We're asking you to join us. The frequency went silent. It has remained silent ever since. Chen submitted his final report the following morning, requesting immediate transfer to a different unit. His request was approved without question. The Rodriguez frequency was officially classified as atmospheric anomaly. Resolved. The investigation was quietly closed, its findings buried in classified files that remain sealed to this day. Electromagnetic phenomena in desert warfare zones have been documented since World War II, when Allied forces in North Africa reported similar unexplained radio transmissions. Equipment exposed to extreme temperatures, electromagnetic interference, and the psychological stress of combat can malfunction in extraordinary ways. But 17 operators across multiple bases reporting identical conversations with deceased personnel suggests something beyond simple equipment failure or mass hallucination. Camp Victory sprawled across the outskirts of Baghdad like a small American city transplanted into the heart of Mesopotamia. By August 2007, the base housed over 40,000 personnel, its streets bustling with the organized chaos of modern warfare. Humvees navigated between concrete barriers, while helicopters traced patterns overhead, their rotors beating out the steady rhythm of military logistics. It was here that Alpha Team of the 1st Cavalry Division prepared for what should have been a routine reconnaissance mission into Sector 7 Delta. The briefing on the morning of August 22nd followed standard protocols. Intelligence reports mentioned possible insurgent activity in the area, but nothing beyond the usual threats that had become part of daily life for American forces in Iraq. What the briefing couldn't account for was the impossible phenomenon that Alpha Team had been experiencing for the previous 18 hours. They were hearing their own mission before they lived it. The investigation began when all 6 members of Alpha Team returned from their patrol in a state of psychological shock, their individual accounts matching with 97% accuracy, despite being interviewed separately. Medical examinations revealed no evidence of drug use, head trauma, or exposure to chemical agents. Polygraph tests indicated genuine belief in their reported experiences. Most disturbing was their claim that they had walked backwards through tomorrow, living their entire mission in reverse before it actually occurred. Specialist James Rivera's account, recorded during psychiatric evaluation, provides the most detailed description of how the phenomenon began. It started in my bunk around midnight, sir. I was trying to sleep when I heard Park's voice outside my window. Real quiet, like he was talking on the radio. He was saying, "Alpha Team taking contact, multiple hostiles, requesting immediate backup at grid 38 SMB 4890036450. I looked outside, nobody there, figured I was dreaming. But then I heard Kowalski respond, "Roger that, Alpha Leader. We're pinned down behind the white building, casualties mounting." The thing is, sir, Park was snoring in the bunk next to me. Kowalski was 2 buildings over on guard duty, but I could hear their conversation clear as day, and they were talking about a firefight that hadn't happened yet. Over the following hours, all 6 members of Alpha Team reported hearing fragments of radio chatter, gunfire, and Arabic voices, calling warnings about an ambush. The conversations they overheard described, in precise detail, a firefight that would occur 12 hours later at coordinates they hadn't yet been assigned. Corporal Lisa Kowalski heard her own voice calling for a medic. Private Martinez listened to himself radioing coordinates for artillery support. Specialist Thompson described hearing Arabic voices warning civilians to evacuate specific buildings he'd never seen but would recognize immediately when the patrol reached them. By 0400 hours, all 6 soldiers were awake, comparing notes on the identical dreams they were experiencing. By 0500, they had sketched detailed maps of streets they'd never visited, marking sniper positions and IED locations based on the conversations echoing from their future. The maps proved accurate in every detail when the patrol later reached Sector 7 Delta. The 0600 hours mission briefing proceeded normally, with team leader Sergeant First Class David Park receiving standard reconnaissance parameters. Intelligence reports showed possible insurgent activity, but nothing that would suggest the specific tactical scenario his team had already overheard in vivid detail. Park found himself in the surreal position of receiving mission parameters for an operation he had already lived through in audio form. The market district of Sector 7 Delta seemed frozen in anticipation when Alpha Team arrived. Dogs had fled the streets hours earlier. Shop owners had closed their stalls despite the early hour. Children who normally crowded around military patrols were nowhere to be seen, as if the entire neighborhood knew what was coming. The team moved through the predetermined route with an eerie sense of déjà vu that went beyond normal military preparedness. Every turn, every building, every shadow matched exactly what they had heard described in the pre-dawn hours. Park found himself speaking his radio transmissions a split second before he consciously decided what to say, the words simply emerging as if following a script they had memorized from tomorrow. At precisely 1200 hours, exactly as predicted by their overnight auditory experience, the ambush began. Alpha Team responded with supernatural precision, taking cover behind the white building they had heard themselves describe 8 hours earlier. They called for backup at the exact coordinates they had memorized from their own future voices. They warned approaching friendly forces about sniper positions that hadn't yet been revealed. The firefight lasted 17 minutes, precisely the duration they had calculated by timing the conversations from the night before. When it ended, the insurgents retreated along the exact escape routes Alpha Team had already overheard them discussing in whispered Arabic. No American casualties. Mission accomplished. Future perfectly fulfilled. But the psychological cost was profound. Staff Sergeant Paula Morrison, who processed the team's return, later described soldiers who looked like they'd become ghosts themselves, people who had lived through their own death and resurrection. Team members spoke in monotones, their responses delayed as if they were constantly comparing present reality with remembered future conversations. Alpha Team completed their patrol and returned to base carrying the impossible knowledge that they had experienced their entire mission twice. Once as disembodied voices from tomorrow, once in the present moment. Military psychologists documented their case extensively, but found no scientific framework that could explain how 6 soldiers could simultaneously experience detailed auditory precognition of events that hadn't yet occurred. What do you think happened here? Was this somehow an extreme form of battlefield intuition, or something that challenges our understanding of time itself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The phenomenon never repeated. Alpha Team was quietly reassigned to different units within a week, their case file classified under anomalous psychological warfare research. Each member was given extensive psychological counseling and eventually returned to normal duties, though several reported continuing to experience occasional future echoes, brief glimpses of conversations that would occur days or weeks later. The official explanation centered on heightened combat awareness and the psychological phenomenon known as cryptomnesia, the unconscious plagiarism of forgotten memories that can manifest as apparent precognition. Military psychologists suggested that the team had unconsciously processed environmental cues and intelligence briefings to construct a detailed prediction of likely combat scenarios. But this explanation failed to account for the precision of their predictions. Specific Arabic phrases overheard from insurgents they had never encountered, exact grid coordinates that weren't available in any briefing materials, and tactical details that proved accurate down to the minute timing of enemy movements. The team hadn't just predicted a firefight, they had lived through it in perfect detail before it occurred. Precognitive experiences in high-stress military environments have been reported throughout history, but rarely with such precision and never with multiple witnesses experiencing identical visions. Whether the result of collective unconscious processing, some form of temporal displacement, or something beyond current scientific understanding, the Alpha Team incident remains one of the most thoroughly documented cases of apparent military precognition in modern warfare. The fluorescent lights of the Pentagon basement cast harsh shadows across classified documents as investigators attempted to make sense of the impossible. September 2007 brought the most extensively documented mass auditory phenomenon in modern military history. 43 soldiers from Forward Operating Base Wilderness reporting synchronized conversations with voices that, according to official records, could not exist. The incident began at precisely 0245 hours on September 2nd, when every soldier on night watch across the base reported hearing the same coordinated transmission. Unlike the isolated incidents at Fallujah or the precognitive experiences of Alpha Team, this was a base-wide phenomenon affecting personnel from multiple units simultaneously. The initial report, classified secret and filed by the base medical officer to Theater Mental Health Command, painted a clinical picture. 43 soldiers from various units reported simultaneous auditory experiences during routine night operations. Soldiers described hearing coordinated voices, speaking in English and Dari, providing tactical warnings about enemy positions that did not exist. But the clinical language couldn't capture the profound strangeness of what had actually occurred. Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, interviewed 10 days later at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, provided a more detailed account that challenged every assumption in the official report. "Sir, it wasn't a hallucination," Torres told his interviewer with the conviction of a soldier who had spent 14 months in theater. "I know the difference between combat stress and reality. What we heard was organized, coordinated, like a massive intelligence operation being conducted by someone with access to information that shouldn't exist." According to Torres and 42 other witnesses, at exactly 2:45 hours, every soldier on night watch heard the same voice speaking in perfect English. "American soldiers, Taliban forces are moving to surround your position. You have 12 minutes to relocate." The voice then repeated the same warning in fluent Dari, providing what sounded like counter-instructions to enemy forces. The response was immediate and instinctive. Second Squad relocated from Tower 3 to Tower 6. Third Squad moved their patrol route 2 kilometers north. Guard positions were reinforced at points specifically mentioned by the mysterious voice. 43 soldiers acted on intelligence from a source that, officially, didn't exist. What made the incident even more unsettling was the accuracy of the information provided. The voice continued broadcasting for 3 hours, providing real-time updates that proved correct in every detail. It warned about IED placements that EOD later confirmed were real. It provided weather updates that matched meteorological reports that wouldn't be available for another 6 hours. At 03:30, it told Torres, "Staff Sergeant Torres, your radio battery level is at 23%. Replace before dawn patrol." Torres checked. It was exactly 23%. The equipment maintenance record from September 3rd documented what should have been impossible. Every piece of equipment mentioned by the voice was found to have exactly the problems described. 23 radio batteries at critically low levels, 7 weapons requiring immediate maintenance, 12 vehicles with tire pressure issues, all matching warnings provided during the auditory phenomenon. Maintenance personnel confirmed they hadn't previously identified these problems, but the official response focused not on the accurate intelligence, but on the impossibility of its source. The medical officer's follow-up report, dated September 15th, dismissed the soldiers' accounts as shared fantasy or confabulation, despite their remarkable consistency and accuracy. The report recommended immediate rotation for all affected personnel and enhanced mental health monitoring protocols. The disconnect between what soldiers experienced and what officials were willing to acknowledge created a devastating psychological burden. These were career military personnel with exemplary service records, soldiers who had risked their lives for months in one of the world's most dangerous regions. Now they were being told that their unanimous, detailed account of an event that potentially saved their lives was nothing more than mass delusion. Torres's final interview, conducted at Walter Reed Medical Center after his medical retirement in November 2007, contained a chilling postscript that was never included in any official report. "Sir, the voice never stopped. Even here in Germany, in the hospital, I still hear it. Last night it told me about the IED that's going to hit Bravo Company next week. I've submitted 3 reports trying to warn them. Nobody will listen because I'm the crazy soldier who hears voices. I just hope I'm wrong this time." Bravo Company was hit by an IED on September 24, 2007. 2 soldiers were killed, 4 wounded. The attack occurred at the exact coordinates Torres had reported hearing in his hallucination. The institutional response to the Phoebe Wilderness incident reveals the military's profound discomfort with experiences that don't fit established paradigms. When 43 reliable soldiers report identical experiences that later prove accurate, dismissing their account serves not truth, but institutional comfort with the explainable. The official conclusion, mass psychogenic illness triggered by environmental stress, explains away rather than explains. The soldiers who heard voices at FOB Wilderness weren't asking to be celebrated as psychics or prophets. They were requesting that their potential intelligence be evaluated on its merits rather than dismissed based on its impossible source. They were asking for the same respect they had earned through months of faithful service in harm's way. Instead, they received medical retirement, psychiatric evaluation, and official silence. The voices that may have been trying to protect them were dismissed as symptoms of mental illness. The intelligence that could have saved lives was filed away as evidence of breakdown rather than breakthrough. The classified files from the FOB Wilderness incident contain detailed testimonies from 43 soldiers, extensive equipment logs, and meteorological data that corroborates much of what the soldiers reported. They also contain a troubling pattern of institutional dismissal that prioritizes comfortable explanations over uncomfortable truths. Whether the voices represented some form of collective unconscious processing, electromagnetic phenomena beyond current understanding, or something else entirely, their accuracy suggests intelligence value that was ignored due to supernatural stigma. In war zones where accurate intelligence can mean the difference between life and death, the military's reflexive dismissal of unconventional sources may have cost more than it protected. The soldiers of FOB Wilderness experienced something that challenged every assumption about consciousness, communication, and the nature of reality itself. Their reward for reporting this potentially life-saving phenomenon was professional destruction and medical exile. The voices spoke to those willing to listen. The tragedy is that their superiors chose silence instead. 3 theaters of operation. 3 impossible phenomena. Over 60 soldiers whose lives were forever changed by voices that, according to everything we understand about death and consciousness, should not have existed. The 2007 voice incidents represent more than military anomalies. They challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. The human mind under extreme stress is capable of extraordinary things. Combat veterans often report heightened awareness, intuitive leaps that save lives, and an almost supernatural ability to sense danger before it manifests. Military psychologists have documented these phenomena for decades, filing them under terms like combat intuition and battlefield awareness. These are accepted, even celebrated aspects of warrior psychology. But the 2007 incidents represent something categorically different. These weren't individual soldiers experiencing enhanced perception or battlefield instincts. They were coordinated auditory experiences affecting multiple personnel simultaneously, providing accurate intelligence about future events and current conditions that shouldn't have been available through any normal channel of information. The official explanations: combat fatigue, equipment malfunction, mass hallucination, feel inadequate when measured against the consistency of testimony and the verifiable accuracy of information provided by these impossible voices. Either dozens of reliable soldiers simultaneously developed psychic abilities, or something was communicating with them through means our current understanding cannot explain. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of these reports isn't the supernatural elements, but the institutional response. Soldiers who risked court-martial to report potentially life-saving intelligence were dismissed, medically retired, and officially silenced. The voices they heard may have been trying to protect American lives, but the system they served chose not to listen. The psychological toll of war extends far beyond visible wounds. When we dismiss experiences that don't fit our understanding, we risk losing valuable intelligence, whether supernatural or simply human intuition operating beyond our current comprehension. The soldiers who heard voices together in 2007 weren't asking to be believed in some mystical sense. They were asking to be heard, to have their reports evaluated on merit rather than dismissed based on impossibility. In the fog of war, the line between the possible and impossible becomes dangerously thin. These soldiers served with distinction, faced enemy fire with courage, and returned home carrying secrets that their own government refuses to acknowledge. They heard voices that provided accurate tactical intelligence, warned of genuine threats, and potentially saved American lives. The tragedy isn't that they experienced something beyond our understanding. It's that we chose to silence them rather than listen. The classified files from 2007 remain sealed, scheduled for declassification in 2032. Until then, these accounts exist in the shadow space between official history and impossible truth, carried by veterans who know what they experienced but can never speak openly about it. In a nation that promises to leave no soldier behind, perhaps the cruelest abandonment is refusing to believe what our own warriors tell us they've seen and heard. If these accounts intrigue you and you want more documented military mysteries that exist in the shadows between history and legend, consider subscribing. There are stories waiting here that will change how you think about the cost of war and the limits of human experience. The voices from 2007 have gone silent, but sometimes, late at night, radio operators in current theaters still report hearing familiar transmissions on emergency frequencies. American voices, requesting assistance at coordinates that lead nowhere, speaking the names of soldiers who won't die for another week, as if the desert itself has learned to remember what we choose to forget. These stories are presented as submitted accounts and legends from military personnel during the Iraq War period. Names have been changed to protect privacy. Official military records may differ from these testimonial accounts. Interpretations of events may vary. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes and does not represent official military positions or policies.